At the beginning of the story, we are shown a military uniform, and in the background, someone is happy that today is the first day in reserve after the damn army. Some jock with red hair was putting himself in order in front of the mirror. He had been handsome before, and now that he had more confidence after the army, he would definitely be able to meet a beautiful girl. After fixing his hair again, he warns all the freshmen to be careful because Appa is already on his way. It turns out that there was a fair at the university where he studied, and the boy was happy when he breathed in the air on the university grounds. It turns out that nothing has changed because the guys were still looking for girls to meet. Before joining the army, he had a lot of ladies, and he was wondering if anyone remembered him. Suddenly, he heard strange sounds similar to a fight, and immediately hurried to find out what the hell was happening. And this turns out to be some lady who didn't want to meet guys at all, but they were too persistent. The fat guy thought that this fair could be made much more interesting if she went to celebrate with them, when suddenly our boy appears and with one powerful blow sends the bully into free flight. Since he calls this girl Sunbae, he must treat him with respect, after which the blonde gets kicked. Unfortunately, the tennis balls did not survive. Of course, after the fight, he should stand in a cool pose like a real superhero and say that these freaks are a disgrace to the entire male race, while the lady looked at him in surprise. Afterwards, he simply gives advice to the freshman so that she should not drink so many drinks and would rather go home as soon as possible. But still, she decides to say thank you to her savior and therefore kissed him. Of course, our boy did not expect such a turn of events at all and was simply shocked by her. And then she just leaves for the last time, saying her name. Her name is Park Minjin. The main character still couldn't understand what was happening, but he knew for sure that guys like him still attracted girls. After which enough time passes, and we are shown a tired guy who cannot believe that his life after university has changed so much. Theol Industries was a well-known company that produced things, and some lady came into the guy's room. It turns out to be a pretty blonde, and the voiceover tells us that most of the clients of this company were girls who had never served in the army. But the biggest problem for him was that women ruled this world. And in such an atmosphere, an ordinary guy simply had nowhere to go. Constant sidelong glances as if he were superfluous here. Suddenly, the blonde simply hit the table and asked Deputy Lee where he was constantly looking, but the boy did not understand what was happening. The main character was already constantly tired of the constant looks at him in the company, so now they also wanted to accuse him of something. Of course, he began to deny everything. Still, he had salvation, and the girl with black hair asked Deputy Choi to stop, because the boy had already said that everything was not as she thought. The blonde was still going to complain that he just looked at her while she walked by, but the brunette didn't seem to care about his words. That blonde, whose name is Choi Yaren, is 2 years younger than the main character, and yet they were in the same position. But the girl still communicated with him on equal terms. It's good that their leader is at least a reasonable person. But only the brunette continued, of course. The blonde misunderstood everything, but the main character should also have been more careful. While our boy was shocked that they wanted to accuse him, the girl simply told him that they live in strange times when he can be accused of something even if he looks at a person wrong. After listening to a very interesting lecture, he has no choice but to simply agree with her words. After which the brunette tells another piece of news. For the first time in a long time, a new employee was supposed to come to their department. Now the main character simply began to pray that it was a guy, because then he would finally be able to share the bonds of strong male friendship with someone. And then she asked a man named Park Minjin to come into the room. It seems that she is already very familiar to us. A girl comes into the room and says that she will be happy to work with everyone. Now the main character was sitting in complete despair because his dream that he would finally have a partner was completely destroyed. While they were getting acquainted with the new employee, our boy thought about the fact that he had already heard the name of this lady. How well everything worked out, because it turns out that he and she graduated from the same university, in which case the guy will become her mentor. The boss only asked if she could rely on him, of course, he simply agreed, but in his thoughts he cursed her because last time he was also training the employee. Since they had already met, she asked Park Minjin to take the next seat next to the main character. And before leaving, she asked Deputy Kim to make a quarterly report and be sure to do it in time for today. Another picture for memes in the studio, and our boy seems tired from so much work. Not only was the new student given a report to prepare, he'll definitely have to stay after work today. Suddenly a blonde comes up to her and starts asking about her makeup and asks her to teach her. And while the ladies were exchanging compliments, the main character sat and thought, why the boss doesn't see that she's just shirking work. While the new employee was sitting next to him, the thought that he was simply tired of the situation in this company did not leave him. Park Min-jun simply smiled sweetly at him and said that she was counting on his help. He apparently had not been paying attention to her all this time. They just sat there, The girl smiled at him non-stop, and it seemed to him that she wanted to say something else. He heard a negative answer, but still thought that this girl was somehow strange. After the main character got to work, quite a lot of time had passed, but he still couldn't understand why the hell his reports didn't add up. The amount of earnings that was listed for the models last month was 10 million won. In the final report, the amount listed as correct. Suddenly, a strange theory appears in his head that Deputy Choi appropriated part of this money for herself. At first, the main character was going to immediately write an SMS to his boss that the amount of 10 million was missed in the report compiled by Deputy Choi. But then he remembers that they worked together for a long time and gives the blonde the opportunity to confess herself. The guy wrote her an SMS in which he offered to have drinks after work because she urgently needed to discuss something. But she thought that this was just a way for them to start dating. Now she thought even more that he was an idiot. She remembers the old saying about listening to the wishes of the dying, so the lady finally decides to agree to his last request and have a drink with him. Suddenly, the new girl just calls Sunbae over and is about to do something, but he just gets scared by it. It's strange, but she began to sniff the air that was next to him. Did she really like his perfume that much? But the main character thought that she had decided to make a bad joke in the workplace. But the lady acted as if she had absolutely nothing to do with it, and he simply misunderstood everything. Still, she decides to do what she wanted and invited the main character to go and have dinner today, but he immediately refuses, saying that he has business. He also gave her clear instructions that at work she should call him deputy and not Sunbae. Now Mak Minjin was upset. All she could do was just agree, but now she still realized that the boy didn't remember her at all. After which the action moves to a cafe in which he and that blonde drank drinks and ate fried food. Choi was trying to understand the reason why the boy was so serious. Did he really decide to confess his feelings to her? In such cases, she was unhappy because the atmosphere in this cafe was not at all romantic. Minjin was sitting behind her, who saw these two leaving the office with serious faces and didn't even notice how she had set up surveillance. She was extremely interested in finding out what they were talking about, but unfortunately nothing was heard. It turns out that it was impossible to sit in this cafe just like that, so the waitress asked to make an order. She ordered a bottle of drink. Still, the blonde is already tired of sitting here, and so he decides to directly ask the reason why he brought her here. When suddenly he begins to ask if he remembered the first day when they first came to work as newcomers. But Choi didn't understand why the hell this idiot started talking about the past. Did the main character still think that they were on the same level? After which his brilliant speech continues. 5 years have passed since that moment. Of course they had quarrels and disagreements, but he was still glad that they were able to become one team. In her thoughts, she tried to understand what was happening with Deputy Kim, and the girl asked him why the hell he was looking at her so strangely. The lady, of course, perfectly understood that she was very beautiful, but if he looked at her all the time, it would become difficult to work together. But the main character had absolutely no time for her jokes, so making a very serious expression on his face, he tells her that he knows how Choi stole 10 million won in the last quarter. The lady immediately began to look for an excuse, but the boy had not finished his story yet. He was going to immediately tell his superiors. But since they are colleagues who came to work at the same time at the company, he gives her a chance. Kim warned her that tomorrow she would have to go to her superiors to tell about everything, and then go to the tax inspection department and tell them the truth. As soon as Choi heard this, she began to tremble with fear. No matter how strange it was, after a long pause, she still agreed with him, but the main character was worried that everything would be wrong with her. And the girl simply smiled in response and said that it was her mistake, and she said thank you to the boy, because he did it all for her sake.
But if you look closely, her gaze looked as if she had already come up with a cunning plan.
The main character, of course, does not notice this and can only express his condolences to his friend. But his problems don't end there because at the end of the evening, she drank too many drinks and now he had to look for her damn house. Somehow, but she still points to a high-rise building and says that they have already arrived. The main character was not sure that the lady gave the exact address, but Park Minjin, it turns out, continued to follow them and could not understand why they came in together. After which the boy informs Choi Yaren that they have already arrived and they needed to quickly return her to normal. Of course, she couldn't even stand on her feet normally, and the main character didn't understand the reason why she drank so many drinks. There's a soft landing of the girl on the bed, and the boy himself tries to understand what to do next. He clearly didn't like the situation he found himself in, and the blonde also seemed to be preparing to cook Italian pasta right now. It was already too late, and the main character was very thirsty, so he decided that he could use her refrigerator. But only upon returning back, the boy was simply in shock, because she decided to turn on the real chef mode. She even found an apron. He just tried to bring the lady to consciousness and wanted to give her some water. And she began to ask him to bring her even more water. Kim thought it was too strange how she even talked while she was sleeping. Since the girl had already drunk enough water, he asked her to go to bed quietly, but we all understand that this will not end there. Suddenly, she just comes up and hugs the guy, calling him Appa. Suddenly, a real love confession occurs, and she talks about how she always liked the main character because he is so quiet and calm, and Choi repented of constantly mocking him. While our boy didn't understand at all what the hell was happening now, she continued to talk about how some frivolous guys were constantly walking around her, and Appa was constantly busy with work, so she couldn't tell him about her feelings. It seems that the girl will soon start crying, but we all understand perfectly well that this is an acting game. Choi asked the main character to give her at least one chance. Kim could no longer believe what was happening, especially that the girl was in love with him, so he decides to tell her that he doesn't understand anything. Of course, the cooking show starts immediately and our boy can't do anything about it. The blonde tries to convince him that he likes her, but she was simply shocked after she saw the number of dishes that needed to be prepared. All this time, the lady thought that he was an ordinary botanist, but at the same time, his culinary skills were excellent. The main character immediately starts cooking and tries to make his dishes the best. The girl also likes his attitude. Suddenly, she begins to realize that something is wrong, because she absolutely could not get the job while this master chef was here. After which she decides to simply push him away and take the situation into her own hands because it was her kitchen. Of course, his participation in this culinary program would also not be superfluous, so she offered to prepare this order together. But so far, Kim is just an inexperienced cook who came to the large kitchen by pure chance and did not know what to do. Everything was going just fine. Choi asked him to focus on cooking the dish and on her, but suddenly his phone rang. All matters are immediately postponed, and he pushes the girl away to answer. She just shouted at him because she couldn't understand the reason why he stopped cooking so abruptly, but he asked for forgiveness. The phone just rang so unexpectedly. Of course, this could not have happened without the intervention of outsiders. This was written by the same girl who was watching him. The message said about an accident in which she got into and asked him to come and help her. While the main character was thinking that this place was not far from here, the blonde asked him to throw away his phone and continue the cooking show. Suddenly, he simply states that he thinks it's wrong that he's participating in a cooking show with his colleague, and while she stood there in shock, the guy was already leaving. In parting, he only said that they would see each other tomorrow at work, and that she would not forget to tell her boss about everything. But she did not want him to leave so quickly. Now she was just terribly angry with him, because she was going to take advantage of the moment during the cooking show, and this idiot just ran away from such a beauty like her. Be that as it may, the girl had already managed to video record what she needed. It turns out that this bitch was filming their cooking show on her phone the whole time. While the main character walked away to fetch water, that's when she put down the phone and then simply pretended to be asleep. She wasn't going to just take orders from some nerd, and so she was going to put him in his place. Afterwards, we are shown the main character who runs out of the house at the speed of flash and thinks that the new employee will soon simply drive him crazy. But just look at his surprised face after he saw that everything was fine with the girl, and she was just sitting on the asphalt. After which she pretended as if she had not written anything to him, and simply asked what he was doing here. The main character immediately wanted to know what was happening here, but the girl had already told her that an accident had happened to her. She even showed him her knees, which were covered in grape juice. It seems that she did this on purpose to be more convincing. She also tells him that she drank drinks alone, and was now going to invite Kim to drink together. For some reason, she thought that she would feel much better after drinking drinks with her son-by. And now our main character simply couldn't believe that he found himself in this situation. First, he had to run away from one abnormal woman who was going to put on a cooking show, and now the second one wants to have drinks with him. The next day, the actions are again transferred to the office in which all our guys worked as if nothing had happened. The girl really didn't like the fact that the main character looked strangely at Deputy Choi, after which she comes up with a strange theory that the boy is actually secretly in love with her. Suddenly, he decides to approach her and asks her to go away with him to talk. The lady answered too impudently as if she had done nothing. The main character doesn't like it. Still, he tries to subtly remind her that she should have talked to the manager immediately after coming to work. In response, the lady simply said that she was terribly busy right now and continued going about her business. I wonder if with such nails it's generally convenient for her to work on a laptop. In any case, our guy thinks that she's just gone crazy. Now Kim is already beginning to threaten that if she herself does not tell about the theft, then he will. But she did not even take his threats seriously. The main character was terribly angry with this damn lady and asked her not to regret her words later. He immediately goes to the manager and asks for forgiveness for distracting him from work. Then he says that he needs to tell him something urgent. Now the boss began to worry that something had happened, but he asked them to discuss it in another room. She only thought a little and then agreed to his request, and so she reminds him that the main character had to tell something, but he could not begin his story. Still, Kim gathers his strength and tells her that after checking, he found out that Deputy Choi embezzled 10 million won. There was a dramatic pause after which the leader addressed Deputy Kim Hyun-woo. For some strange reason, she thinks that he was the one who asked Miss Aaron to pay for it. The boy just sat there in shock and didn't understand what the hell was going on, but suddenly she handed him the phone. Imagine his surprise after he saw a recording of him and that blonde filming a cooking show together. He simply could not believe what was happening now because Choi Yerin simply set him up. Suddenly, the main character simply hits the table with his fist and declares that this is all a lie because it was she who first offered to participate in the cooking show. But it was all very difficult to believe because Aaron is a wonderful girl with a terrible character and he is just a loser. While the main character was trembling with fear and did not know what to do, the manager asked Deputy Choi to come into the office. Still, she decides to find out the whole truth and therefore asks if it is true that the girl was the first to offer him to star in a cooking show. Their gazes met, and now the main character simply begged for this damned lady to tell the truth. Suddenly, the girl just starts crying and talks about how she took these 10 million for her sick mother who was deceived by scammers. And then he talks about how Deputy Kim decided to take advantage of the situation and invited him to a cooking show, after which he starts crying even harder for more drama. Suddenly, the guy just jumps up from his chair and shouts at her to shut up and not dare to deceive the manager. It all looked like the main character staged an attack, but in fact he just wanted the girl to tell the truth. He just wanted her to stop lying, but the blonde didn't stop crying and didn't say anything else. But now the manager hits the chair and asks what the hell Deputy Kim is doing here. He tried to object, but only she gave him a final warning to let the poor girl go. After which she stated that the amount that Yerin took would be marked as unforeseen expenses, which made Deputy Kim simply shocked. But she is also going to turn a blind eye to the situation with the protagonist's cooking show. She's just trying to explain to him that the girl was incredibly important to their team, but now our boy is simply speechless. At that moment, everything became clear to him, because during the entire time he worked in the company, many strange moments happened, and now Kim understood their reason. If he endured this again, he would no longer be able to live in peace. The manager only said that Aaron was mistaken, and they as colleagues should have supported her, but he was terribly infuriated that the girl began to unite against him. Of course, he was not going to tolerate all this, and since they did such a terrible thing, he was going to repay them in the same coin. After the main character left, the manager decided to ask if she thought that Deputy Kim had recently begun to give in. But the blonde only says that the boy had a terribly reserved character. Even if he went to the audit department, it would become another headache for them, after which the girl said that the boss could rely on her to solve this problem. Meanwhile, this lady was watching the main character and thought that something bad had happened in that room. After which the two came out into the common room and praised each other for a job well done. The boy was already gnashing his teeth in anger because it was these two who turned people into abnormal people and then pretended as if everything was normal. After which Park Minjin finally decides to ask what happened to the main character because he is somehow different. She only told him that she would always be on his side and he could trust her. In response, he simply reminds her that in the office she should call him manager and not Sunbae. She just wanted to ask for forgiveness when suddenly he lost his nerve. She constantly called him damn Sunbae. The lady began to ask to be given one last chance when suddenly he realized that the girl did not perceive feedback at all. After which the authorities called the lady to their place and they were both surprised by such a sudden call. The blonde simply felt that she had nothing better to do now, so she offered to sort the inventory in the warehouse. She was gladly ready to fulfill the order, but she just didn't know where this warehouse was located. After that, with the most contemptuous face, she asked to ask Mr. Gunner about this. It's good that not Mr. Beast. And then came that very exciting moment when these two became real enemies. But he's not stupid enough to react to stupid provocations, so he asks Pak to go with him to the warehouse. And while our couple was leaving, the blonde was thinking about the fact that losers become close to each other too quickly. While they were collecting items in the warehouse, the main character told her that one of the main responsibilities of all newcomers is sorting in the warehouse, so let her check. The girl simply couldn't understand why the hell this thing wasn't working, but it seems that our boy was surprised by something else. Of course, in order for the plot to move forward, the girl must fall from the chair, let me guess. In the next frame, he will save her like a superhero. Well, of course, that very moment when a guy saves a beautiful girl after which they will have to kiss. But that was not the case because our main character is a real Sigma who asks the girl not to do this. Yes, that's right. He asked her to get up and not break anything else around her, but the lady was counting on kissing a guy like him. The main character injured his back, so he asked the girl to do the rest of the work herself. But for some reason, she didn't like this turn of events, when suddenly she starts calling him Sunbae again and says that she likes it much better when he smiles. And his previous confident appearance suited him much better, but he did not understand what she meant. The main character tries to understand the situation and asks where she could have seen him before. After which, in her thoughts, she simply begins to beg for this idiot to finally remember her. But he just simply leaves, leaving her without an answer. All he had in his head was the girl's words that his previous confident appearance suited him much better. And then he begins to remember that he is the real boss of the rocking chair here. After the action, they are transferred to the moment when the blonde was returning home, but it was there that the boy was waiting for her. She just asked why the hell he forgot here. But in response, she only heard that the main character had been waiting all this time for her to return home. It turns out that he came for a reason, but for the sake of revenge, and since he was still accused of holding a cooking show, now he is really going to hold it with this blonde in the leading role. After all, from the very beginning, she brought him to her home only for the sake of a cooking show, and here the lady is already beginning to deny everything. That is why the main character decided to help her, but after such a terrible act, he could not calmly let her leave. Suddenly, she also starts yelling at the guy that if he doesn't like something, he can go and complain to his superiors. In such cases, she asked him to return home to open a bottle of drink there and drink it. After which, the boy informs her that he will meet her tomorrow at the Audit Hotel. He fully understood what he was going to do. She would be sent to prison for stealing a large amount of money, and he would be fired from his job for organizing another cooking show. Suddenly, she simply took him by the arm and offered to go into the house where they could discuss everything in detail. He asked her to let go of his damn hand, but the blonde was sure that they urgently needed to talk. To begin with, she asked him to just sit down, and then she took out an excellent drink and a lot of delicious snacks. The best way to try it out was to drink together. But the main character doesn't like what she's trying to do at all. He came here not to drink drinks, but to talk. She too was not going to back down and told him that otherwise he would once again be accused of staging a cooking show. But only this time our boy's face became very crazy, and it would be easier to tell her about it. He is not at all against being accused. Still, she decides that there is a more normal way to come to an agreement, but such methods do not interest him at all. She tried to convince him that he actually liked her, but now he was completely sure that the girl would continue to manipulate people until the very end, as it was convenient for her. People for her were like puppets that she controlled. Yes, this idiot, it turns out, wasn't joking when he said that he would organize a real cooking show, because she also liked to cook different dishes with him. Of course, she immediately began to deny everything, but we all remember very well what she said when she first saw him cooking. After which the culinary show began, and now the blonde asked him to turn off the camera as well. What would it be like to be in his place? But it didn't matter to him at all what she told him, because she had to remember well that people should not be treated as if they were some kind of puppets. Since he couldn't explain everything in words, then in such cases he will show what it's like to be humiliated in what she does best. While he was thinking that he had already defeated this lady, she simply stood in shock, not understanding what he was doing. It seemed that the main character was going to cook a dish according to a very complex recipe. She asked him many times to just stop the cooking show, but he didn't care about her so much that he didn't even listen. Here is the look of a man who will soon face defeat, and you thought there was no need to ruin the life of the main character. While he was thinking about what else could be added to this dish, he asked what lady it tasted like, but she asked to stop the culinary tournament because she was absolutely not in the mood for competition. But judging by the fact that the girl still continued to cook, she was simply deceiving him, of course. Nothing can defeat the spirit of a real cook. If suddenly she did not understand the meaning of cooking, then Master Chef Appa will show her what a real culinary tournament is. And now he was wearing a chef's hat and an apron, which meant that now the main character was serious. And she sat in even greater horror than before, because she understood that she could not defeat him so easily. But she was shocked by something completely different, because his cooking skills had improved a lot since their last meeting. But how is this even possible?
But our boy understands perfectly well that she cannot cope with him, but the tournament will continue, and you will find out how it ended in the next video. Thank you for watching, subscribe to the channel and like, so that the new part will come out soon.